All right, so we have got a hell of a treat for you today. And when I rattle off this list of accomplishments, it's just unreal. 56 national wins, four-time 250 motocross champ, two-time 250 supercross champ. First AMA Pro title was in 1984 in the 125 class. Two gold medals, one at age 46 and the other at 48. Top three finishes in the Indianapolis 500. Seven-time participant in the Motocross the Nations. 17th motorcyclist inducted into the Motorsports Hall of Fame, right?
Yep.
And I know I'm missing more. Oh, maybe two AMA Supermoto wins. And I know that there's more I'm missing. What did I miss, Jeff Ward?
Motorcycle Hall of Fame, I guess. That's probably a given.
Yeah.
Won the IndyCar race at Texas Motor Speedway. That was probably a big highlight of my IndyCar career, even though I did really well at Indy. I did win an IndyCar race and had a few poles. So, yeah, I think that's about it, besides doing rally cars and off-road trucks and cycling events and the Ram race across America on the bicycle. Done quite a few things, so, but you got the majority of them.
So the first question I had, which has got to be, it's the one that was like burning inside of me the most, where I'm like, I'm not waiting to ask this, I'm going right on it at the beginning, is there's got to be a process that you're replicating, because it's not like the average person doesn't go into all these different sports and different disciplines and just figure it out. This is not normal behavior. This is very unique. Is there some sort of process or strategy or way that you attack a new sport? Like, maybe walk me through, where I envision the conversation going is you leave one sport, you take a little time off, which for you is probably a month, and then you
Right.
get the itch to compete again. And now all of a sudden there's like this light bulb that goes off, a decision is made. Maybe walk me through the consistent replicable parts of your process that get you to all these achievements, if you don't mind.
Yeah, that's a good question, because it is difficult going from racing motorcycles, two wheels, to four wheels, which I'd never done any go-karting or any past experience whatsoever. I just wanted to keep racing. I couldn't do it in motocross because physically at some point the body gives up, and it's a lot of years of grinding and motivation. There's riders coming in, you have to keep stepping up, whether it's back in our era, it was bikes and technique. So yeah, when you're 32 years old and you're racing against 16-year-olds, it's when you're not winning enough, and it's like, okay, what can I get into now? Maybe where I can be at least on an equal playing field physically, probably better shape. And cars was probably one of those. So I dove into the deep end, and my mindset was, I believed I'm as good as those guys, athletically, physically, mentally. I just haven't learned the process yet of what I need to learn of what this car is going to do. But once I do it, I have the ability to get to that level. So I was never intimidated by their talent or where they were at. It was just that I hadn't had the experience yet to get to their level. So I went in with, an open mind. I mean, there's no stupid question, asking I had a lot of good friends, drivers, Paul Tracy, guys around Penske that I could go to and ask these questions and weed out. And basically when you got down to it, even when I went to Indy Laps 500, Ari Leyendijk, came up to me and he said, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm going to tell you what not to do. And that was a lot easier to learn because there was a lot less few of those than there was to learn how to get good at it. So once you weeded out what the nots to do, that got you to the next level. And basically it's not hitting the wall and ruining your car because you're done for the day. A motocross bike, you can fall over, you can miss a triple, you can cartwheel, straighten the bars, get back out there and figure it out. One mistake in the car at the Indy 500, it's totaled. You have to build a new car or your backup car, and then I can't ruin this because I don't have another car. So then you're really kind of intimidated and really don't want to step above that comfort zone to put yourself in a worse position. So mentally, I've always been really strong with that. Even when I was training, doing triathlons, when I'm at the starting line, I believed I could win, but realistically, no, I wasn't going to be able to. But if I didn't put my mindset at that top level, I wouldn't get as much out of myself as I would have if I went in there going, let's just see where this goes. So I would go flat out, running until I realized I can't do this. I would back it down, but I'd be way ahead of where I would have been. And same with the car racing. I kind of just jumped in and just felt that I was at that level. And of course, it just took a while to learn what the car was going to do, because it doesn't know who's sitting behind the wheel. If it doesn't want to turn, it won't turn. It doesn't matter if it's Mario Andretti, Paul Tracy. You have to make it with the suspension change, tire pressure. There's 1,000 things that can go into it that the engineer is going to try, that you need to feel if it got better or not, and then get going in that direction. So luckily, I got on some good teams right off the bat with my Indy Lights, which is a step below Indy cars, which is like jumping into the lights class into Supercross with never doing it before. So yeah, I just seemed to, my learning curve was pretty quick, and I just wasn't intimidated by everything around me or by other drivers or the the hype of being at an IndyCar race.
Yeah, and it seems like what's really the thing that stood out for me the most about what you said is you believed in yourself before the evidence existed that
Right.
you could. And I feel that because I'm a mindset performance coach or a mental performance coach. And what I find is everyone is looking for the validation that they now can believe in themselves. So it almost seems like you flip that script. And, belief is such a powerful, identity, belief, the values you have, the characteristic traits you have are so powerful. How do you feel you were able to figure that out when everyone else seems to be doing the reverse and is waiting for the evidence to support the belief? How were you able to manage that piece? And also, how did you know that it was so valuable to do so? Because that to me is a very important part of your success.
Yeah, I think because even growing up in mini bikes, moving up to bigger bikes, I was really small. So I was always getting the fact, oh, you're too small, you'll never make it. There's just so many different things that I was getting negative feedback on. And even when I moved into Indy cars, I had some sponsors where I was doing some smaller truck stuff that I had this goal at when I went to Indy. I go, I want to go to Indy. And they were basically saying, no, you'll never make it. So when somebody tells me that even it's just a motivational factor of when I got into big bikes, I came in 78. I didn't win my first championship until 84. It took me 6 years to win a championship. And as I was moving, I was only like 4'11", 95 pounds when I was on my driver's license. So moving up to 125, people were saying, no, he's never going to make it. And I did get smoked. I got lapped on my first national, both motos. I hole shotted, but then the next week I finished 6th overall. And then I got better and ended up 7th in the championship. So it's just always been a mentality of, tell me I can't do something and I'll do it. And I think I even put that into my own brain when I go up to do things I'm not familiar with. I'm almost putting that thing in there to where, everybody's expecting me not to be able to do this. Well, I'm going to show them. So I don't have all that pressure of, you get the, I don't know, confidence built. Maybe it's a false confidence, but a false confidence is better than no confidence. So that was always my theory. And even though at the Indy 500 is like, it's a spectacle that I don't care if you're racing or sitting in the stands the morning of the event, you're nervous. It doesn't matter who you just going out there. But once you get the helmet on, you pull off the line, you're warming up your tires. It's on. I'm winning this thing. I'm getting that guy in front of me. And there's not one negative thought throughout, the whole thing. So I don't know if you're born with it. I think you are, just if it's a way you can fool yourself maybe sometimes or something, but confidence is just, I've never lacked it in anything I've done. And, yeah, I've been beat and I've been smoked and, just even in motocross where you thought you had it and you didn't win, but that was just more motivation to go back and work harder the next day. And that's what I thrived off. I thrived off having guys like Johnny O'Mara and Hannah and Ricky Johnson that pushed me. They made me a better racer and a better athlete because of that. And if I didn't have that, I would have never got to the level, and I probably wouldn't have got to the level in car racing because it would have came too easy. So when things come hard, I think you appreciate it, a lot. And it didn't come easy for me, and it didn't come easy in Indy cars. I just didn't step into, open doors like, oh, here you go, here's an IndyCar ride. I had to go to races, walk the pits, talk to people, call sponsors. I bought my own car, my Indy Lights car. I jumped into the deep end, and because I'm just a racer, that's what I live for. And I'm 62, and that's still all I do is live for competing. I don't know when I'm going to wind down, but it's still in me. And like I said, I don't know if it's a natural thing or if it's just something that it built along the way.
I love it. And it's interesting because it seems like there's no room for doubt. A lot of times people are like, well, how do I build my confidence? How do I build my confidence? And I always look at both sides of the coin. So I say, well, what's the opposite of confidence? It's doubt. And so how do you remove doubt is also one way you can build confidence. And when I'm listening to you, it doesn't sound like you give any space, not an inch, not a millimeter for doubt. It almost seems like doubt doesn't exist. Would that be an accurate statement?
Pretty much. I mean, because I've raced with broken ankles for a few races before I've had surgery. And I mean, I go in still with the feeling I'm going to win this thing, because I'm not going in going, I'm going to baby this thing. I just want to milk it for 10th because I'm not going to get the most out of me. So I was like, and it worked out. I mean, I went to Nationals the week after I had surgery. They went to pin it. It shattered. I went up to Hangtown and got second behind Ricky. I led the first moto, but I went in there with the mindset I'm going to win. And, yeah, it was painful. Yeah, I couldn't do a quarter of the things I wanted to do, but I was way ahead of where I would have been if I went in there just going, okay, I'm just going to milk it. I would have got a bad start. It would have just been a depressing day, except I went out there and I got second, and that was a win for me with the condition I was in. So that's always been, like I said before, I go into everything as if I'm going to win this thing. And then from there, I just deal with what is dealt at the time and make the best of it, whether it's a bike that's not handling well, or I got a flat tire, pick the wrong, whatever it is, I'm just going to make the best of. It's like my mechanic, Mike McAndrews, he's on one of the movie things where we're in the Donations, and the second lap of the 500 in the sand track, my shock blew out. All the oil blew out, the smoking. And then he was saying something about, he thought the race was over. He could see the shock was blown. And then he said all of a sudden, 2 laps later, he goes, he's making this bike look good. He goes, that's impossible. There's no oil in the shock. How can it be? I just adapted to how the shock was springing like a pogo and changed my style and missed bumps and jumped, so I just adapted to what I had. And that's just been my whole career.
That's an interesting topic as well, as adaptability, because if you think about it, when things change, we go from, being comfortable to now being uncomfortable. And you see that a lot with athletes, that the comfort versus discomfort, the familiar versus unfamiliar, the known versus the known. These are huge topics that I personally feel aren't discussed enough in motorsports, because I think that they have such a powerful influence on our behavior, the way that we think, our beliefs, our actions. Do you have a strategy for being adaptable, or like maybe there's like a narrative or story you have that's attached to adaptability and also attached to obstacles? Is there a way that you approach just obstacles and challenges, and in a way that just is almost like on an auto adapt, if you will?
Maybe. I mean, one thing is, I don't like getting beat. So that's like, if I get beat and everything's fine, that's one thing. But if something goes wrong and I give it, I won't not forgive myself, but I know I didn't give 100. I don't like going, no, and I left something on the table. Like I could have rode harder, because I had a flat, I didn't need to, or pull in to say I have a flat and then go back out. Or, the Donations, I pulled off my goggles in the first turn, and I've seen a lot of guys come in and they come in 3 or 4 times to get goggles. I never pulled in. I raced the whole race, no goggles, I got mud in my eye that like 5 laps from the end. I couldn't open the eye. I kept, I wasn't pulling it. I could have lost my eye, but I just wasn't going to do it, just because I know if I got in and found out it wasn't as bad as I thought it was, I would have been like, I didn't give it 100%. I could have gave more. So I just don't, it's just that mentality of and also just not wanting to feel at the end of the day that I left something on the table. Whether even though it was a 10th place, that if it was a 10th place where I would have been somebody else would have pulled in the pits, then that's a win, for that day, because those points add up at the end of the season.
Oh, for sure. It almost sounds like you had a fear of the feelings of guilt, shame, humiliation, embarrassment that would be the result of you knowing that you did give up or didn't give it 100%.
Pretty much. Yeah. I mean, it's just, the way I am. I guess, maybe there's other areas when, if I'm doing another sport like golf or something else where it's for fun, and, it does, I can't golf, so I don't care, so I'll go just chase it. I won't even chase the ball, just put another one down. I won't even go get that one. And I don't care my score. So it doesn't bother me at the end of the day that I got smoked, because, but when it comes to racing and I'm behind a wheel, I mean, yeah, I'm competitive at golf, but I just don't care. But it's just something that if it's my profession and I'm getting paid to do it, it's just a whole different level than just something for fun. Where, now I cycle and I race my age group, and I'm still super competitive because it is a race, and I am competing against other guys, which physical fitness comes into play. And, if you get beat, then that guy beat you because he was stronger or whatever. But, I'm still affected by that. And I'll figure, okay, what I need to do next. Maybe I trained too hard. Maybe I got to rest more. So I'm still on that pattern of that type of stuff. So, but yeah, like I said, with others, I just don't know what, I just want to make sure I just give 100%, in the situation that I'm in on every race.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you won your first AMA motocross championship in 1984, what were the things that you started to learn prior to that? Because obviously you got a couple wins, you had some success and obviously some failures, but to win a race is one thing, and it's certainly an amazing accomplishment, but you find that there's a lot of people in the history books that have won races, but have not won a championship. What was it that you learned either in 84 or prior to 84, after you turned pro in motocross, that you think kind of strung together the consistency of always being up front to the point where you could win a championship?
I mean, definitely training. I mean, when I first came into it, I was riding a lot, but wasn't doing a lot of off a bike stuff. I mean, I was doing some weight stuff, and Kawasaki had a football coach, and we were doing some strength stuff, but it seemed to pump me up more than for riding. So I got away from that. And then our bikes weren't as good back in the early 80s compared to Honda and Suzuki. So we struggled there. And even probably when at a point where in 83, I was probably physically and mentally strong enough at that point, because I was kind of a late bloomer, even, growth wise and weight wise. I could have won, but I just didn't have the whole package yet with training, and OSHA was on it and the Honda was on it. And then I signed up Jeff Spencer in 84, who was training at Honda for 5 years. I hired him personally for myself, and that really just having a better program. I was never really rest day, like what do I need to do to rest and to build strength. I wasn't a big strength lifter with, power lifting like Jeff was with, cleans and jerks and full squats. Everything was range of motion, all power, nothing that wore out your muscles. It was just pure one lift strength, which is like on motocross, you're barely hanging on until you need that power, and then you're back to relaxing again. You don't need to do 100 reps of lightweight like you're doing an endurance race, because that just pumps, that breaks down your muscle, then builds it up, which creates, your muscles to pump and get tight, and you lose flexibility. So he helped me so much on that end of it, of getting strength, where I just came leaps and bounds on my power. And then he was, of course, Olympic cyclist, sprinter. So I got heavy into cycling. And it just, the whole package came together with stretching, flexibility. And I won 8 out of 10 nationals that year. And I won like my first 4 or 5 supercrosses that year. And that kind of clicked it going on. It was basically more of a routine and getting my training down to where I wasn't just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what worked. Cause that's kind of what motocross was back then. It was, I hear Barnett's out running 2 hours in the sand every day, and, 5 gallons of gas. And you're just like going, okay, I got to run 5 miles. And you just had just sometimes you go to the weekend and you were flat just because you did too much and you weren't hydrated. And back then, I mean, maybe we had Gatorade, right? So it was like, there just wasn't the scientific thing, and the bodies are still the same. So it just got better and better. And once I got that program down, I definitely was one that was always willing to put in the work. I used to drive to Carlsbad and practice, which was an hour south. And then I'd come home, shower, and then drive up to Pasadena to go to the gym, which was another hour and a half in traffic, work out, drive back home, do my run at night, and then do it all over again, like 3 days a week. Plus, so I had this routine going that, I was willing to do. and that just started my career going. I was with my Jeff Spencer was with me till I retired in '92. So definitely having somebody on it's you have to have a group of people around you, just like everybody says today that you can't be just getting so many things from 10 different people. And I seemed to get it. It took a while to get that program, and then once I got it, I was in a good space, and we just managed everything injury wise and all that. So that was the biggest step. And then also getting that first championship was it was stressful. Even though I had a pretty decent lead, it's still stressful to not have something go wrong that day. And then my always mentality was, once I got to then, is that wouldn't you rather be in this situation than not be in this situation? So wouldn't you be more upset if you've lost the championship already, or you can't win it, or are you going to be more nervous that you're in it to win it? So it was like, yeah, okay, that sounds good. That I don't know who I learned that from, but yeah, I'd rather be here having a chance to win it. So there's than to not be here at all. So it took a lot of the nervousness off of like anything that you have to do is hard to do. It's the things that you want to do come easy. It's like when people say I have to get a whole shot, you're not getting a whole shot. It's because you're putting too much pressure on yourself to have to get a whole shot. You got to want to get that whole shot, picture that whole shot, and you will get the whole shot. So that's kind of how it started working back then with and like I know you do the mental stuff, and Spencer was really good at that. I did talk to some people, and you get just little things from everybody when you listen to mental coaches on how to think, and different things for different people. And one guy I remember was when you're out there, don't think about like exactly what you're doing. Think about how you want to go out and show these people and these fans what you can do. Like it's almost like showing off. It's like, okay, here's the hype, let me show you what I can do, and then everything else is gone because you're only going against what yourself and the track, and you're not worried about what anybody else is doing. So that was always like, okay, I'm going to show you, let me show you this. And then you just went and you rode your best, and you could just feel it like feeding off like the perfect turn, and like, well, that was great. And then you're not thinking about everything else, and you just seem to go forward. And yeah, there were times when you got tight, and for whatever reason the track wasn't working your way, you woke up wrong, you had a stiff neck, but you just got to keep that percent of the drop for a championship. This is like you said, people win races, but it's to win that championship, that dip's got to be a percent or two, whether it's off on your training or eating or stomach or flying or tired, but that can still get you on the podium, that can still get you a win. And then there's days you show up, you're Superman, and you win both motos. So there's not too many guys. There's a few of them that have done it the whole season. That's hard to do, but then also you got to look at competition and the things that come into play at those times when you win. Like when I won 8 out of the 10 races, it was just Johnny and I. He got second every race, I got second the other two. So yeah, those were good times. And there were years when we had 5 guys that could win on any given day, and that made it a lot tougher to have a bad day. So but yeah, that's kind of how things went on my career.
Yeah, I love it. And I think one thing that I caught that you said is the power of questions. It's interesting, and I know you do coaching as well, but it's almost like the better coach you become, the better the questions you ask, instead of so much like revealing the answers. Because I always find that if you bring an athlete and kind of maybe bring them down the trail of coming up with a solution themselves or answering a question themselves, one, I feel like there's some sort of greater intrinsic value to that than for me to just be like, oh, here's the answer. And so I think the curiosity and questions are underrated. And then also what I thought was interesting is you combined curiosity or a question of, hey, would I rather be leading the championship or would I rather be out of it? And so not only was that a great question, but it also challenged your perspective. Because obviously, as you know, like the way you look at things, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And so you kind of took 2 powerful skills that I'm always coaching, and you actually combine them together. And I think that was certainly a powerful experience for you. One thing I really want to know the answer to, there's a lot of things I actually want to know from you. One of them is, when I think about the sport, I, by the way, had more pictures of you probably on my wall, when I was a teenager. I ripped all the cool photos out and put them up. I had that RJ side of me, Rick Johnson, when you're a kid, he was kind of like the flashy guy, a little bit more like, appealing to that 13, 14-year-old, 15-year-old guy that's trying to get a date or at least get a woman to even look in his direction. And then there was you, who was like consistently, quietly always there. You were on the wall too. But what was interesting to me is that you had, in my mind, you have Johnny O'Mara, you have Brock Glover, and you have Jeff Ward as like these nice, cool, calm, consistent guys. And then all of a sudden, there's like, boom, there's like a Hannah. And then boom, there's a Rick Johnson, or maybe even a Ronnie Lachine. What was the dynamic? I mean, are there any good stories you can share or any fun, interesting anecdotal stories of just like the comparison between, and maybe even some of the similarities too, because I almost feel like there were two camps, there were the wild childs, and then there were the consistently cool kids that the parents were proud of, that were you guys. Were there any good stories that came? Were there any conflicts, or did you actually find that you sometimes aligned better with someone like that because they were your opposite and there was something unique and interesting and kind of attractive in a way about that?
Yeah, like RJ, I mean, Johnny was too similar of my personality. We were both training fanatics, just serious up to the line. RJ was probably the first one. Bailey was super cool. I mean, you'd even talk to you, it was like, so it was, there was some guy I never talked to, Ricky, so Ricky was probably my first, Hannah, of course, but I was so young at then. I was just a cocky kid that didn't care, and he was always, flipping you off or doing something if you passed him, or he'd pass you back and you try to get under your skin or something. So you were that young kid that was a pest to him. But then when RJ came, yeah, it was, I mean, he'll tell you, I talk to him all the time, he hated me and I hated him just because I think we were so opposite. I think he hated me because I was so damn serious and trained so hard where he didn't want to quite do that. And now he had to because I was there, and I hated him when he got in the victory, when he won, because he was so flashy and cocky and put you, in your place. And you were like, you wanted to go hit him. And so that just made you go home and work harder. And then he knew I was working harder, so he hated it. So it was that rivalry, the whole time. And, like then Bradshaw kind of came in and he was another wild child. And so that same conflict was kind of the same. But we didn't really have it, because I was not my tail end of my career, but, I won races. It's kind of more him and Stanton, maybe a little bit, which is Stanton's my personality as well. So yeah, and then there's Matasevich, but he was a teammate. So we didn't really have any conflict. Same with the Lachine when he came on the team, was more of a teammate. And Ronnie has a thing to where he goes, man, I didn't want to hang out with Jeff because I didn't want to do anything he was doing because it was like too hard. Like he wouldn't come ride with me. He wouldn't go do anything with me. He didn't want to go play tennis with me, or so he was just always laughing about it. And so yeah, but there wasn't really too much conflict. I mean, yeah, there was a few times on the track when we'd hit one another, but I could always trust RJ. Yeah, he was aggressive, but he wasn't out to to take you out. And he knew I wasn't that type of rider. I'd rather work for it and get you than clean you out. But there were times, when you put the block pass on and it just happened to, go your way and he went down or whatever. And Brock was really mellow too. So we didn't have too much conflicts on that. And back then, the riders were pretty cool. I mean, we always had to run the donations together, so we would get to know each other a little bit more. And we worked really well together on that. Once we started winning, it became like a must for us to win that event. So we did everything in power, and we probably learned a lot of little secrets of each other at that time, whether we went running together and, I found out Ricky couldn't run that good, it's like, and then we always knew Johnny could kill us on runs, and he always did. And that's what he did for his focus. I was more of a cyclist, and, Bailey was good at everything. So it was kind of cool to get with those guys and have fun at the hotel. And then we'd go back to Supercross and, nobody talked to each other. We wouldn't see each other because we weren't on the same team. And, maybe we'd fly now and again together. But yeah, Ricky and I and Johnny were probably the biggest rivals through my career.
Oh, for sure. And what's really interesting about that, and, because there were like three things that stood out when I looked at your career. I said to myself, what are like three things, if I had to pick three things about Jeff Ward that resonate with me most, what would they be? One of the three we kind of already covered, which is your ability to take a specific unknown process to me, which we're starting to reveal on this podcast today, but take a podcast and the repeatability of your process. So the repeatability of your process is one. Number two, I want to talk about now, which is relationships. Believe it or not, I noticed that with you, one thing that stood out for me, I always try to look at things a little differently than everyone else because I feel like I can find nuggets that no one else sees. And I feel like with you, there might be something with relationships. So I want to explore that for a moment. And what made me come to that thought was I noticed a lot of longevity and commitment with Kawasaki. I also noticed that it seems like there's been a long-term relationship with Troy Lee. And then I also thought it was interesting that you had a relationship with Paul Tracy that was strong enough and had enough trust that along with your commitment and you obviously purchasing your own Indy Lights car did turn into you going into a sport that for many people, the barrier to entry is quite high in general, even if you're already in motorsports. But here you were coming off two wheels going into four. So, maybe share a little bit of your thoughts on what is the value of relationships specifically in motorsports. And am I onto something perhaps that maybe there's something that you're doing different than maybe some of the modern day athletes where sometimes they're on one team for 2 years, they underperform, then they bounce to another and to another and another. Are we onto something? Is there something you feel that you've done differently to foster relationships that are long-term and that are valuable and meaningful?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for one, I'm not greedy, so I started with Kawasaki. I was originally with Suzuki and then Yamaha, and then they didn't have a works, so I went with Kawasaki. And of course, at the time, their bike wasn't that good. The 125, I was struggling. I wasn't ready. So, they committed to me. They stayed with me when I wasn't performing, maybe that, because like a Jimmy Weiner or Galen Moser that was winning races before that. I was 16, 17. But so they hung with me for a while. Then, then when the bikes got good, and then I started winning, then it kind of, it gelled together. And at the time when other people wanted to hire me, of course I talked to them, but I just felt loyal to Kawasaki for them staying with me when times were tough, when I wasn't winning, and not just passing me on. And, because I was small and, there was plenty of people saying I was never going to make it because I was just hit or miss, and I could have been thrown out the back door. And maybe this day and age, I might have been. So that's kind of, what it did. And I was with JT at first, then went to Sinisalo. They came over and, they were really the first big brand that really believed in me and kind of made the company around me as the first big athlete here in the States. And then they got Ricky Johnson, I think the next year or so. So I felt loyal to them, because they got my career kind of going. So once things when I got into the top echelon, I felt the people that got me there deserved to be with me when the times are getting better and are going to be good, because before that they weren't great and nobody left me. So that's with Oakley, Sinisalo, Troy Lee, Kawasaki, everybody that I raced with, I pretty much stayed with my whole career. And that was kind of the theory, the theory behind it. And they're like family. And there was no reason to jump ship to go just because of maybe getting paid a little more. I felt like I could, to learn a new bike, there was going to be growing pains, and maybe it wasn't going to go the way you thought it was going to go. And I don't want to look back, man, I should have stayed with Kawasaki. So I felt where I was at Kawasaki and all my sponsors that, believed in me at the beginning when I wasn't winning races. I had no reason to leave them because now I made it to the top. So that was just, and with Paul Tracy, he just came to some races. Troy Lee was doing his helmets. We hit it off. He loved motorcycles. I went to a bunch of races with him when he was with Penske, and then I went to Indy, and he's like, dude, you need to race here one day. And I'm like, no way. This is like 1990. I'm like, you're crazy. I've never even driven a car before. And he's like, oh, you can do it. I know you can do it. Your motocross is so talented of ability to do that. You'll learn it easily. You got no fear. You know how to ride a bike, the balance, everything on a motocross bike is way more than you need to even think about an Indy car. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. And then as it got closer, I'm like, okay, what am I going to do when I'm done racing? And my shoulder was jacked up. I had to have surgery my last, I made my farewell tour in 92 because I just knew that I didn't want to do another season with my ankles and my shoulder. And Yeah, I won a national that year. I almost won the 500 championship again. I was pretty close, but I wanted to go into car racing with a name that hadn't drug out for 2 or 3 more years in motocross, and was getting 5th and 10th place. And oh yeah, he was the guy that used to win. And so I still got support from Kawasaki when I moved on to cars. I still worked for them. I used that money to help buy the car. The car was branded Kawasaki, so if I did that, they let me use their PR firm for free. And so I kind of piggybacked off that to get good exposure. And then Paul was always there. He knew the top Indy Lights team to talk to. When I'm walking the pits, when you got Paul Tracy walking in with you to talk, it's a bit, when he's racing for Penske and winning, dominating races, got doors open, and helped me get in to talk to people. And yeah, they knew who I was. I mean, they follow motocross, any sport nowadays. When riders go to another, they're just awed by your ability, and just the same as you are of them. Like, you just wish you could switch roles, and realistically, it's the same. It's like there's as much headaches in that, and troubles and bad days than there is in motorcycling. And but everybody always wants to try to the other sport, and I was super lucky to be able to do that. There's nobody in IndyCars that's ever going to go to motocross and experience what a motocross rider feels when he races or jumps. And I got to do that with IndyCars, and it was something super special that I never dreamed I'd race 7 Indy 500s and win races and do what I did in cars. And I think it's all because of the people around me, and good people that I even got within the IndyCar stuff, that maybe because I was from another sport that was a champion, and maybe I didn't get. In every sport, there's bad deals to be made. So maybe I got help that way because I didn't, somebody didn't want to be a part of my bad deal. Than somebody else that doesn't have a name coming up that maybe didn't get the equipment that he was maybe promised or something. So there's just a lot of politics involved, I should say, in every sport. But I was just very fortunate to have good people, and definitely, I think that's what helped me out in the motocross. Like I said, I stayed with Jeff Spencer the whole time. And you know how trainers are nowadays. They'll be with him for 2 years, and it's the trainer's fault. I'm going to go somewhere else because I'm not winning. I'm not because I'm undertrained, so I'm either overtraining or undertraining. It's his fault. I've trained too many guys that it's like, well, I don't know if I train them too hard or not, but it's not near what I used to do. So I don't know if that's too much, and maybe at that age. So, but I always tried to let them go of how they feel, and and not over. I'm not the type of guy that's going to pound it into them and do it. You got to be self-motivated in the sport. You can't have. It doesn't matter if somebody's yelling at you to do something. If you don't have the motivation of yourself to get out there and do it, then you're not going to have that motivation on the track to dig that deep to win the race when the going gets tough. So yeah, the people around me were definitely a big part of my career.
And it seems like they knew. So one, they knew you were loyal not because you said you were, but because you showed it. I mean, there's no not seeing that in Jeff Ward. And then, so loyalty, I think, for successful businesses and for businesses that invest in an athlete, I mean, that's what the investment is.
Right.
It's almost like investing in a stock, right? You don't buy a stock, you might buy a stock when it's low, because you look at the sheets and you say, hey, this has got potential. I think this is a winner. I'm going to invest in this. And so there needs to be loyalty, because you don't want to buy a stock low and then all of a sudden, sell halfway on the way up, or maybe, that person leaves you or what have you. So it seems like you exemplified loyalty. And it also seems like people knew what they were going to get, because your consistency of process was there. And it's like, all right, this is how Jeff works. His work ethic is there. He's going to figure it out. You just got to give him time and tools and just leave him alone. Like that's how I would look at you.
Right.
I would say, he's going to be loyal. Just give him time and tools. Ask him if he needs you, or don't even ask. Give him your phone number. He knows he can call when he wants, and just let him do his thing. Like, you don't have to babysit Jeff Ward. You don't have to, come on, Jeff, you can do it. Like, I think you're better off telling Jeff Ward he can't do it instead of that he can, right? So, yeah. I think maybe that was what they saw in you, because I mean, that's what I see in you. So I'm assuming that was part of it. Do you think that there were other things that they saw in you, or were there things that people that did believe in you or did choose to hire you or take you on as an athlete? Were there things that they mentioned consistently that you can remember that you think a modern day athlete would benefit from as far as like exhibiting those traits and learning those skills?
I think you hit it on the head. I mean, they know I was reliable. That I was going to be there, whether it was testing, whether they called me up and said, "Hey, we have to go tomorrow because we got this party." Because back in our day with the factory bikes, we didn't know when we were going to get stuff thrown at us, and just because we weren't building it here, it was coming from Japan. We didn't have, the communication like we have now with, you can see everything, do everything. It took forever to. So I just think they, knew I was just going to give it 100%, and they saw it with, injuries. They saw it with, just circumstances and stuff thrown at me that, maybe other people wouldn't, or maybe they thought they wouldn't have done that. So yeah, there's just, and like I said, it's been since I was 5 years old racing mini bikes. It's always been that way. I've always been small. I've always been the underdog. It seemed like, even though I was dominating mini bikes, it looked like I shouldn't have been, just because I had to start with milk crates. And, then when I got into 500, I wasn't even 5 foot tall when I'd race the 500 at Saddleback, and 3 different classes and win them all. And, and then I'd go to pro and get smoked. And, there's just so many, and then I didn't even qualify for my first Supercross race, and so it was just so many things that were going on, but I would never give up. I was always out there every day. And I guarantee you, when, at Saddleback Park, I almost would ride every day. There wasn't a time, I guarantee somebody that went there, he could go there, one day and not go, and then go 2 weeks later. I was going to be there that next time he went, because I was there every day. There was never a time that somebody that went riding that I wasn't there, because my mom would take me up there when I couldn't drive. We were 20 minutes from Saddleback Park, and she would drop me off with my gas can and ice box, and then go home. And I would stay there by the concession guy that served food all day, talking to him. I would just ride motos, and she'd come back at 5 o'clock with the Cadillac and put my bike in the trunk. So that was my, I wanted to go there. I made her take me there. It was like, I did not. So, because my dad was working. This was like when I was, nowadays you'd probably get arrested for child abuse. I was 11 years old, 12 years old. She'd just drive up there, drop me off, 5 gallons of gas, food, and leave. And I would just know everybody at the park and just go ride hills, do tracks, and then just sit there and wait for her to pick me up. So, yeah, racing was in my blood, and it's just what I know. And I think people just saw that in me throughout my whole career, that I just wanted to win, and that was going to happen, because it had happened before that, and they could see, well, maybe it's going to take time. And like I said, they knew the bikes weren't great. They knew what we had compared to what we were racing against, and with my age and the bike, and they could see the potential. Those guys are smart, in those positions, because they've been there with other riders. And even when I was leading races, if I did crash, you just don't lead races because you're slow. So it just takes time to get things all put together. And I was fortunate that it all worked out.
No, I love it. And the visual of you with the ice packs and the bike, and mom leaving with like the smoke cloud behind the Cadillac and the concession stand. I'm loving the visual of that. I've got that image in my mind. I love it. The one thing I wanted to cover, and then after this, I want to move towards like modern day, is the third thing I noticed about you that clearly stands out is just career longevity in general. And it's interesting because I was talking to someone yesterday that asked me if I had read Tom Brady's new book. I think it's called like TB12 or something like that. And they said something about how like the average, don't hold me to this, but I want to say something like the average NFL career for an average player is like 2.5 years. But then his was, 12 or 11, 12 years, 14, whatever it was. Longevity is underrated, because you can't become a legend. You're not getting inducted into a Hall of Fame after a 2-year career, a 3-year career. I actually don't know the math. I didn't research this, but I can't imagine, if I had to guess, maybe you've got to have like a 7 to 10 year career to at least have a chance or a stab at it. I'm guessing. So obviously longevity is key in motorsports, specifically motocross, supercross. Longevity is definitely a challenge. Here you are, still competing, still running. You've got surgeries over the summer, and then boom, you're competing. You don't stop. Um, what's the key to longevity?
I don't know. I think it's just love what you do. I mean, that's the basic thing. I love athletics. I love being in shape. I love waking up every day and reading, like, how do I feel today? Yeah, there's other things in my life. I have 4 kids, wife. I brought them up racing motorcycles, soccer, club all the way through college with the one. So I was doing a ton of other things. Um, but what everything seemed to wrap around was always athletics and just my physical ability to do what my next challenge. I always had to have a challenge. So yeah, I think that's just what keeps me going, is just the next challenge. I always have, and I don't know, when I'm 85, will it be to walk around the block faster than anybody else at 85? I don't know, or the wheelchair. I have no idea. But it's whatever it is, it's going to be, what is that? How can I, be the best at whatever it is today with my, with athletics. And that's just always been, I mean, my daughter runs marathons. We did a triathlon last week, a team event with my other son. And so, yeah, it's just kind of been in the family. And I think it's, for one thing, longevity in life itself. Anyway, getting to an old age definitely is a big factor of being healthy. And I mean, I've had my issues this year with AFib and tachycardia. I've had 2 surgeries this year on my heart. Just had colonoscopy, stomach checked, and having to see, just because I don't know if it's, my brain is still thinking I'm 20 and I shouldn't feel this way. So, or I'm, or the fact is I'm just old. So, but then I compare myself to some other guys that are 62 and 3 when you go cycling, and like, I want to be where that guy's at. But then you find out, he's an ex-pro that won gold medals and he has never stopped cycling. It's like, you're never going to get there because his heart is still, and lungs are still twice the size of yours because he's never stopped. I wasn't a pro cyclist. I trained cycling, but it was always a secondary to my motocross. I could never want to wear myself out where I couldn't race on the weekend. So I didn't really pick it up till later in my IndyCar career. I didn't cycle a lot, and I really didn't start picking it up again until about 10 or 12 years ago. And when I seemed like I was getting overweight and a little bit, and now I want to try to get to where I want to be, but I'm never going to get there. I just have to be happy with where I'm at and just go for my own goals. And, so yeah, it's just every day is just trying to figure out stuff to make me better.
I love it. And then, so if you kind of fast forward and we go into modern day motocross, supercross, are you still actively training and working specifically? I think you are, with motocross, supercross athletes. What type of athletes are you currently working with?
I'm not working with anybody right now. I kind of, last guy I worked with was, I did Seeley for a long time, and then Joe Shimoda. And then I worked with Jet Reynolds and Ryder DeFrancisco for a little bit. And then stuff's always complicated because Ryder D had somebody, Jet had, but then with Team Green, they had Tickle working with guys. And then when they go to pro circuit, they got, so, I was just kind of a middleman really to get him, with Shimoda. I had to bring him from never riding the Supercross, couldn't get through hoops if his life depended on it. Brought him up slowly to get him to where he was almost winning races his first time out. He knew his potential, but then he wanted, he went to, somewhere else, and they have it. So it's like, you're not going to fight with them. And, so I just kind of like, if somebody wants my help, they'll call me, and, I probably won't even charge them. I can give them I can talk to them, tell them what what they think they should do or whatever. And like I said, if you can't, if they're not going to be able to do it themselves, I don't mind doing something over the phone and stuff like that to, get their feedback of what they're doing and where they're feeling, that instead of having to be there every day. Cause I was there every day with Shimoda. I flew with him. He stayed with me in the hotel. I had to drive him cause he couldn't drive. So it was a big commitment. And I enjoyed it cause he's a great, look at him now. I'm so pumped for him. He's such a good rider. And you knew that then, you could just see it. But being from Japan, and he had different mentality, a completely different mentality of how things processed with being aggressive and mindset and worrying about stuff. And so that was a big part of it too, and which I enjoy. So, down the road, there might be something where I do something more of, I take so many riders and I talk to them 3 or 4 times a week and what's happening this weekend. I know all the tracks. there isn't anything they can't tell me that I haven't probably ran into myself with whether it's going into Indy cars. I never raced the 500 before, so I had to get my mindset set on going into something I've never done. I don't know what's going to happen. I've only been told, and get that mindset of like, I got this, and basically they're just human. They have the same issues. They're all nervous too. They should be more nervous because they're expected to win. It's like, so I had that part of it. But then when you get to that level, then, there's another mentality of when you're expected to win, you have to go this other route. So yeah, there, I don't train anybody right now, but, I go riding with some of the guys. Ryder D, I went with a couple of weeks ago, and there's trainers I know here that work with guys that we'll end up doing some rides together. And I'm always like, hey, anytime you're down this way and want to go for a ride, call me. I know the hills, I know the trails, and it's a recovery ride. Great. Cause I need recovery every day. So, yeah.
So when you think about modern day motocross, supercross, you've worked with some of these athletes that are at the top. What do you see as the one thing that maybe they have as an advantage when we were to compare them to maybe the 80s, early 90s group of you and the boys? What do you feel like they maybe have on you guys? And what do you think maybe that they haven't learned yet that you guys had that they don't?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, definitely things have improved with physical therapy, machines. I mean, ours were like caveman stuff, with diatherm, and of course you have the putting it in ice with electrical pro, whatever it was, and so things have come so much further for injuries and preventive injuries, and we were just, I think, we're just like learning every year of what, and we weren't that scientific about it. I mean, I had to look at Jeff Spencer. He's a chiropractor, so at least I got adjustments and stuff like that, and and it got to the right doctors. But there's just so many things now that doesn't even make it on the same level, and maybe that made us tougher, maybe. I mean, I think we probably trained too much, overtrained, because I didn't wear a heart rate monitor, so I didn't really care. It was either, I went by how I felt that day. I would ride motos, and if I was overheating, I'm done. I don't need to push it today. I'll save that for the weekend. But then I'd go home and still run. And then if I didn't feel good, I'd back the pace down. But I always did my workouts. It was whether it was at the intensity of whatever my body felt like I could do. But I knew where I was dipping into the no man's land, and the suffering part. But then we used to race on the weekends, on our off weekends, go race 3 classes and make some money on the weekend. We didn't take the weekend off. I never played a day of golf in my life. So it was like, I'd rather go on a long mountain bike, or there was a triathlon that weekend, or I'd rather do the biathlon. I used to do biathlons in the middle, half marathon and a 40K bike, and, the weekend in between. So yeah, I probably overtrained, but I still backed it down. I did my riding every day. And now I think it's just more scientific. I just think it's everybody's and I think sometimes that messes with your head when you realize, oh man, I'm a little tired, I'm a little overtrained. Everybody's like, uh-oh, like, this is going to hurt. It's like, yeah, it's going to hurt. That it should hurt. If it doesn't hurt, then something's wrong. So that's kind of my mentality. And some guys don't like that today, of hearing that, and it's like, yeah, it's like guys didn't want to go ride in 100-degree weather out in the hills because it was hot. And I'm like, yeah, it's hot. Because when you go back east and it's humid, you're going to be wishing you were out here 3 or 4 days. It's like, so that's just the way I, trained, and it's just different nowadays. Everything's more structured, and, you got to pull back all the time. Everything's pulling back. And I just seem to be the one that always, instead of pulling back, I always went forward. But I made sure I always tried to be rested for the weekend. I did, I'd never pull back on the workout day too much. I always did it. I would never skip anything, just because I just, mentality wise, I just could not, because if I skipped the running, I knew Osho went running. So I still had to run. It was just my brain, even though I didn't give the percentage I usually do, because I wasn't trying to get the cardio out of it. I was just trying to get the motions out of it. So, but that also builds too. It's also plateaus, and then you get to be faster, and you can run longer. And I also like doing triathlon, so I always wanted to keep the mileage up so I could improve in that. If I improved in that, I improved in my motocross, cardio too. So that's just kind of how I did my approach to the racing. But today the riders, I mean, yeah, they're in great shape because they go full motos wide open, and I'm sure some get tired, but I don't know if I've really seen a real hot race yet for the last couple of years. Where, well, yeah, we did. We saw one at Paula, and they cut the motos down. So there you go. We did 45 minutes, 45 minutes plus 2 at Glen Helen, 106-degree weather with 78 humidity, with smog where you couldn't see the mountains, but they had to cut it down to 25, because it was too hot. So that's kind of the mentality, If back then they would have probably tried to add 2 more laps to the race if they could.
Yeah, exactly. So just out of curiosity, how much do you think a poor mindset and mental game has been the thorn in riders' side? When I say riders in general, not necessarily anyone that's worked with you. This could be a global statement. But how much do you think motocross has embraced mental performance, and how much do you think maybe riders are suffering as a lack of having it? Because to me, I'm biased, so I always like to look for other people's opinions. Yeah. I'd be curious to hear about yours with some of the modern day riders that you've either worked with or been a part of or just know of.
Before I answer this question, I'm going to plug my phone in because it went to 10%.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I don't want it to quit. I'd rather have a pause than have to start over.
Yeah.
So let me grab my charger. Hang on. Yeah.
And I think I can still hear you while you're plugging in.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, so we're good. So what are your thoughts?
Ask the question again.
I was thinking about that. Yeah, no worries. So when it comes to mental performance, and we talk about the athletes that you're aware of, or even just your thoughts in general, how much emphasis do you think has put on it? Do you think there needs to be more of it? When you've worked with athletes or have heard of other people that work with athletes, have you found that maybe the common link is not so much fundamentals and not nutrition and not fitness, but maybe the missing link is more the mental side?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's always the theory, right? Is it 80% mental, 20% physical? There's always a percentage, and confidence is a big factor. I mean, I have to go with that. Just like I said before with my IndyCar stuff, I went in confident that I was the same level as these guys. I just haven't learned the technique yet and what it takes. If I went in going, man, there's no way I can beat, Al Unser Jr. in an IndyCar race, or Paul Tracy, because I raced with them, because they've been here forever. If I took that mentality, I would have never got there. I would have just been like, I would have seen them out there going, it wouldn't have been in my brain. It would have just been, oh, they got me, or I don't know what I'm doing type of deal. But I just, my confidence was always like, I knew I could do it. I just needed to learn the ropes. And confidence is probably, I mean, it's a huge factor, but you can be the most confident in the world. But if your body gives out on you with 10 minutes to go in the moto, I don't care what your brain's saying, it just is not going to work. You can't, it's got a limit. The heart rate's got a limit. Lactic acid's got a limit. Everything's, overheating's a limit. Your body will shut down. So it doesn't matter what your brain's telling you. Yeah. And the problem is with motocross, the talent and the effort it takes to ride a motorcycle isn't like cycling or running, where when you bonk on cycling, you can still pedal. You can still back it down. You can still fuel yourself and maybe get motocross. When it collapses, you're going down. When you come into the hoop section, when your arms are tired and that one hoop's going to hit you and you're weak, you're going down. The first thing you do when you come into those hoops is you dial down the throttle. So it's kind of, you can't say it. You almost have to say it's 50-50, because you can be the most confident guy in the world, but if the body's given up and you haven't trained it properly, that mental isn't going to get you through, except you're going to back it down and maybe finish the race because you didn't throw in the towel, because you're mentally strong, but you're definitely not going to beat that guy behind you that's training harder than you, that has the same the mentality. So it's kind of a 50-50 deal there, that if you can get both of those at 100%, then you're that's the bomb right there, that you're going to be unbeatable. And that's where I feel Jet's at right now. I think he's got the confidence that I don't think anybody else has, besides maybe Tomac. And then he has the physical ability working with Osho. I don't think he's as strong as Tomac is, but his riding style lets him get away with maybe not being as strong as somebody like a Tomac. I don't know if that translates into Supercross next year, where Tomac can out-muscle it, because you do have the hoop section. There is, a little more barrier than in strength than outdoors. Outdoors is more flow and missing bumps and breathing right, where Supercross is a little more, I think, more strength involved, because you're missing a lot and you're over jumping, and then you got the hoops I think Tomac's on that same level. I don't see too many other guys that are, Sexton's up there, but then I don't know if the mental game's as strong as Jet's. So yeah, I think it's a 50-50 deal on the mental and the physical. They both have to be at 100%.
Yeah, for sure. And I actually asked Chase Sexton's dad. I thought this is the most interesting question I'd asked anyone, or at least the most interesting response I got from anyone. I was at Daytona, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago, whenever it was, and asked his dad. I said, well, what do you and Chase do to work on the mental game? And his response was 2 words: just ride. Just ride. I said, okay. And I walked away. I'm like, that's not how it goes. And it's funny, you talk to anyone, any of the top guys, they've all had mental coaches. Like, everyone's at least explored the topic, right?
Yeah.
And I've seen it with some of the athletes I've worked with some guys for years, and, we're always there, if you get bored, I'm coming out to California next week. You should come out, check. We have a Formula Drift event.
Wow.
We're going for the championship there. It's in Irwindale. I don't know how far away you are.
Yeah,
probably an hour.
If that, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So we'll talk about that. But it's really interesting. But, one thing I wanted to ask you, with your background in Kawasaki, one thing that I'm interested in is your opinion on this, is that I feel like culture is huge. Like, once you do what I do for a while, the natural progression is to get into like leadership, emotional intelligence. You start working with CEOs. Like, I have a couple CEOs I work with companies. That just like seems to be the natural progression, because even I've got a friend who is the mental coach for UConn men's basketball and also the Utah Jazz. And he's the same. Like, we talk and it's like, yep, we all move to that CEO. And when you talk to CEOs, a lot of it is leadership, a lot of it's emotional intelligence, a lot of it's culture. And what I think is interesting is how many of these teams are actually working on these 3 things. And where my mind goes to, and I'm curious to see what you think, if you're comfortable answering this, Monster Energy Pro Circuit Kawasaki was dominant. I mean, absolutely dominant. Now, obviously, you can't be on top forever. It seems like eventually things tend to rotate. But from a culture standpoint, a leadership standpoint, is there something that you see in Kawasaki that you would advise them on, where you're like, hey, here's a great opportunity for you to improve? Because it does seem like culture is important in motocross, but maybe not discussed as often. At least I don't see it as oftenly discussed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can see as a young rider coming into pro circuit, the pressure of having to perform with their record. Probably, I mean, I don't know. I haven't been involved too much with pro circuit, their rider, like their team at all. I know Mitch as a person. I know I wouldn't say he's a slave driver, but he expects excellence. And that's tough for a young kid coming in there, making mistakes and then getting beat down of like, why'd you do this? Or, you need to do that. And it can send guys off on a spiral downhill because of the additional pressure. And like I said, you have too many people telling you what to do, from the girlfriend to the mom to the dad to the friends to the trainer to the team manager to the mechanic. And that poor rider at that age, when they're 16, 17, and they're on now the elite team, they just came from amateurs where they've won Loretta's, they've been winning for years, and now they're getting smoked or they're crashing. Mentally, yeah, it's a breakdown. And I don't know who they have, if Tickle is their guy, but I think Tickle works for, the factory. But I think some of these teams need to have some guys in there that maybe been there, done that. I know Stanton helped Honda for a long time. I mean, I went with Kawasaki a little bit, but then I also worked with Kordowski and Laraku, who have already been there. They've already done it. They know it. But I didn't work with the Matasevich when he came in, because I was racing. I did help him because I went riding with him. I used to go to his house, wake him up, so he had to come with me. I had to get him out of bed. you know, I was like a babysitter. So, but I helped him a lot, and I let him work with Jeff Spencer, which I didn't let anybody, because I didn't feel he was a threat, but I also liked him and I wanted him to improve. And he went from, you know, the 125s to start winning, and his strength, you know, he couldn't lift his head. That my warm up was his max, you know. So we got him up so much higher, and that just kind of shows what I think, if somebody was in there that's been there, done that, can be that guy they talk to. And structure, you don't have to be the trainer. You don't have to be the, you know, the guy that's there every day whipping at him. And because, like I said, if he doesn't want to do it himself, it's not going to get done. So I don't care who they give him. I don't care if they, you know, they're sleeping with him and you wake him up every day to get him out of bed. He's still not going to put the effort in. So he's got to put the effort in. But I think you just need somebody there to get your head on straight and what you need to be thinking. And, you know, just even the day before and the night, and getting up and getting to the track, and everything needs to go in a rhythm. I mean, it's like if you're going to the track and you get a flat tire, it throws the whole day off, you know. And so there's things that's just, you know, it can be just somebody coming up to you and asking you questions that you don't need to be answering right now, because of what happened last week. And, you know, I know you don't want to be a dick, but you're a paid professional now. And I think some of these kids that get in there, they just got so many things bouncing off, and they're worried about their golf game next week, and, you know, or where they're going to go. And it's like, I don't know what, you know, some of these teams have, but I've been around a lot of them. But I just think that structure is a big part of it. And somebody that has been there and done that on a team that, and I think most of the teams have that now. I mean, Club MA, all the guys, they've got guys that have raced and been there and done that, but I don't see too many of them that won, you know, 6 or 7 championships that were hanging around. You know, Ricky was there for a little bit. Carmichael, he's moved on. But if you get guys like that in there, and guys that have been there throughout, they can really help somebody out. Just like Ari Leindyke and Paul Tracy and guys like that helped me. You know, if I didn't talk to them, I'd have done all these mistakes. Like I said, that just tell me what not to do. That's what they said. It's like, well, you could tell them what not to do, and then they can do everything else and they'll be fine. So
it's so true. Yeah. And I think maybe what also might be going on is, I think that in motocross, supercross, obviously it's results driven, but, you know, when you're in my field, you already know that one of your biggest top 3 enemies, if not number 1, is hyper focus on results. And so we're always talking about how results are a byproduct, right? So for example, if I just sit here thinking about a result, and I just think about like how bad I want it, I think about what it's going to look like, what's going to feel like, and I just focus on the result, it's actually a poor use of my time, because the reality is the result is just like this blink in time. It's like a moment where, like, all of a sudden, you know, you cross the finish line, but it's like, if you really break it down, it's all the things that you did. It's the preparation, it's managing your emotions, it's, like you said, your confidence, your beliefs, obviously your narratives, your intentions, your execution, removing doubt, having a relationship with fear and knowing that fear you want to lean into, not pull away from. It's looking at things as a challenge instead of a threat. And so there's like a whole bunch of tools that we offer. And it's interesting that with almost every single athlete, you say, well, you know, what's your intention, or what do you want? And everyone just wants a result. And I'm like, that's it? Like, it's so empty. You know, it's like, the result is cool. I'm not saying that we don't want results. We do everything for a result. I mean, that's what motivates us. The only reason we're motivated to do anything is for a ultimate outcome. But the thing is, how much time are you spending focusing on that outcome? Because you spend more than 5% of your time on it, it's probably too much, because 95% of your time needs to be on how you're going to get to the outcome. And so I think maybe that might be where Pro Circuit Kawasaki is running into problems. And then also, if you hyper focus on results and the results don't come, what comes next? Feelings of guilt, shame, humiliation, embarrassment, which are the lowest energy vibe emotions on earth. And they really carry with them a lot of weight, and a lot of weight that weighs on your shoulders, pulls you down, and also doesn't set you up for success or making positive moves the next day and the following week. So at least that's my perspective on things.
Yeah, I mean, you have a more physiological or whatever thought process of it, because that's what my thought process is. I hate losing. I hate that feeling. Yeah. That's it. Yeah, exactly. I got one thing to think about is I don't like to feel this way. It's like I don't like a broken ankle because it hurts. So I don't want a broken ankle. I don't want to feel like a loser. So I should probably win. So it's like, so it's super simple. It's like, it's like for me, it's like, and plus going into the race, I've always known that I put the effort in. That's the whole, I never have gone in like you'd see in the weather, oh my God, it's going to be a 98 degrees and the humidity is 90%. And you know what, humidity sucks. And if you haven't done that already and figured out that you won't die from it and you've already pushed through it, it doesn't bother you. It's like, bring it on. I'll prepare for it. I'll get up in the morning. I'll make sure I got my cold towels. I'll stay cool, and I'll just go for it. But if you haven't put it in, you're like, oh my God, it's going to be hot tomorrow. Right then, you're done. You're already worrying about of overheating during the race, that it's going to be just so hard. And I never had that coming into it. Yeah, there were times when you're sick, injuries, but like I said, I always went to the line with 100% that I still could win this moto, and then just went from there. But my whole philosophy was, after a race, when you got when RJ beat you, if you went 1-2 and he went 2-1, the feeling of getting beat was the only motivation you needed to go out to win the next week, to be there. I just do not want to feel that way again. And I did that a few times when I first started racing. When I wasn't in shape, I went to those races that were 100 degrees in Alabama and humidity, and I died, and I thought I was going to die, and I didn't even want to race the next weekend because I knew it was going to be hot again. And at some point I said to myself, I do not want to feel this way ever again. So I had to start training harder. That was back when I was just going off my youth and, mini bike status, and thought I could rule the world as I moved into the bigger class. And, those few races where, you just thought you were going to die. And it felt so bad that you were scared to race the next week when it was hot, because you knew what was going to happen. And you had to work on that to where you got rid of that fear of, racing in hot weather, and you had to kind of thrive on it now and want it to be hot. And that was kind of the Barnett theory, and when Barnett would show up at the line at, Millville, and it was 100 degrees, and he'd show up with his helmet on and his Jofa on. I think he was foaming at the mouth. and I'm a kid, like under an umbrella with a ice rag on my head, and you're down there looking at him going, oh, I'm dead. I'm like, I'm done. He's like doing his own starting gate, and you're in an umbrella while your mechanic's doing yours. And right then you're beat, right? You're already done. It was just like, okay, who can I beat on the line now? Well, maybe that guy. He's got ice pack on his head. So it was years like that where, I was a boy racing a man at that time, and
that's a great point.
It just slowly, you figure it out, and it all clicks. But like I said, I had a lot of people behind me that, like, maybe nowadays it wouldn't have worked out as great. But I was still a top 5 rider. I mean, I was still podium and getting a second or third. I wasn't winning championships, so nobody was going to probably kick me out the door nowadays or whatever. There's plenty of guys still hanging around that are barely doing that. But I just felt loyal back then when I was struggling and having those days to where they saw my potential, but I just hadn't turned to a man yet from a boy and got the right training going and figured it all out. But nobody had it figured out back then either. So, and then once we all did, then everybody did it.
That was the beauty of it. It was almost kind of like the wild, wild west in a way, because there wasn't so much anecdotal evidence, or if there was, maybe that book wasn't in your library. And it's not like, you had I don't even know. Do we even have internet? When did we have Google? Do we have Google?
God, there was nothing back then. I mean, you had a phone recorder at your house. Is about the only way you got information. You had to go to the library, or you picked up a running magazine and read about how guys did intervals, to get the heart rate, and you kind of mimic that. But luckily I really owe a lot to Jeff Spencer, because he was an Olympic athlete. He went to the Olympic Training Academy for sprinting, and he had to do all those intervals. And that's what he had me do. I'd run down to a track about 3 miles away from my house, my warm up, and I'd do my running intervals. And if it took me, 2 or 3 miles, and then I'd run back home, so I had it all laid out. And, you'd sprint and do your heart rate, and you didn't have the watch. You had to do your counting in seconds. And there was nothing back then really to do all that. So it was just all kind of hit or miss. And it was just, to where nowadays it's like you can go on the internet and get 1,000 programs for
Oh,
whatever
for
you
sure.
want to get to bring up your, your threshold and your heart rate and what zone to be in for rest days and, how far to push it in each zone. I mean, and it just gives it, you don't have to think so much, and maybe that's good. Maybe it's bad. I don't know. Maybe, it's hard to say, where I just went off of feeling, and I still did almost maybe 2 years ago, to where I started wearing a heart rate monitor for the first time. I was always, every day I went riding, it's like, wear a heart rate. I'm like, no, I'm just going to go to where I know I can't go anymore. And then I know I'm doing too much. It's like, then how do you know if you're tired the next day? Well, I'll get tired twice as fast as I did today. So, and then I'll know I'm tired. And it's like, oh, yeah, that's true. You will. Okay. But, you know, if I was racing professionally, then I would take it more seriously. Like, I need to be good on this day. And I do for long rides. We'll have a 100-mile race coming up called the Hardman in December. And of course, I'm going to monitor and be fresh for it. But like when we just ride every day for a month, you're out with your buddies. You're with, a buddy one day that hasn't ridden a couple of days, and he's strong, and you've been going for 5 days, in the heat, and he takes off, and dang, you're going with him. That's it. You're not going to, you have to. And then, there's days where everybody's taking it easy, but then there'll be the day everybody's got to show off, on the hill. It's like nobody can go easy. So you just kind of burn yourself out a little bit. And that's probably why my tachycardia and AFib started up, because I think my heart muscle is completely worn out. So now I'm on a different program. So now I'm trying to reinvent my training strategies now at a late age.
So as we wrap things up, I'm really curious to hear, like, what are like the next challenges? I mean, obviously there's almost like an addiction to challenge, right? And
Yeah.
so there needs to be a challenge, or else I can't see you thriving with just sitting around. I mean, obviously you got the great background, Newport Beach. There's probably some tasty, even though you're happily married, there's probably some tasty morsels that pass by daily on the paddle boards. There's probably some beautiful boats that go by, but I don't see you sitting there watching that. I see you sitting there saying, what is my next challenge? So with that said, what is your next challenge? What are you working on right now?
I think I mean, I've had a lot of kind of reality checks here with the heart thing. I mean, I never had any problems with my heart. And so, I mean, it would just take off AFib at 250 beats a minute and stay there for 4 hours. And, then I had to be on blood thinners. I'm on blood thinners now because of my surgery. And then I had the tachycardia gone. And then all of a sudden, that only happened when I cycled real hard. Then I was just sitting on the couch a couple months after that surgery, and the heart would go off out of rhythm for 7 hours. Then it'd go back, and then I'd cycled. And a week later, I'd be sitting around, just sit and watch TV, go off again. So we went and got tested. So I had to have that ablationed in 2 places. So that seems to be gone. And then about 3 weeks ago, I had an episode where I got super dizzy. My right eye got foggy. So I had to go to ER. It seemed like it was called SVT, which is a different form of tachycardia, but they think that's from the surgery. So like I'm just trying to okay, I just need to see where I can get my level of comfort. I'm only 3 months out from my second surgery, and I'm getting pretty strong again. I just did 45, 50 miles yesterday, but I'm not near as where I was. And I'm just slowly trying to get there to see if I can creep up. My heart rate's a little higher resting now, but I think because of the surgery and the inflammation. So, I mean, I still want to race mountain bikes for fun. I mean, there's a lot of fun races in Arizona, 50 mile. The places you go to are fantastic. And it's not necessarily a race because it's so long. It's just more of like survival, and you're fueling. And if you can get through without suffering, and even if you do suffer, it's always gratifying at the end. And you're not really looking for the results so much, except the fact, more the fact that you completed it and your training preparation worked. And your buddies are there. So like this Hardman coming up, it's one we do every year. And it's, well, not a lot of guys I know do it. I'm one of the promoters that help put it on now. We bought the Hardman series, that this other crit cross that I've been working with. We did some bicycle races on go-kart tracks, and kind of went in the dirt like supermoto, so everybody could see the racing. It was super fun. So now I'm kind of doing that, and more I'm backing down. But then RJ called me and wanted me to do the Baja 1000 with him. So I'm like, dude, I never, or if actually wants me to run with his son Luke, and then somebody else at DRW wanted me to do and they're like, I go, I've never raced in desert, not even on a motorcycle. And the guy, he's like, dude, he goes, you'll be as good as the guys that are driving now without even driving the course one time. It's not that type of racing where you're flat out. You need to make the truck finish. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that. And so, yeah, but so right now, yeah, it's just kind of, getting my health back to where I feel comfortable, and where I can push it. Cause right now I really can't. My energy level, listened to a couple of podcasts. I think it was with Drew,
Yep.
about gut health and all that. And I seem to be having some issues with that with my vitamins, because I'm really low on B12, and it shows that I have some type of infection, or maybe a bacteria, which I've had tested, which it says it doesn't, but everything I read says I'm a deficiency, and that leads to your gut of the enzymes. So I'm trying to get that. I might even give Drew a call because he said something about places out here to get that all checked, because I seem to be like, my power just is gone now, and I don't think it's from the heart surgeries. So yeah, I'm just trying to figure that out. So that's my goal now, to get back to where that was, and then just pick some. My daughter does a lot of the, like I said, she does marathons, and she did the mountain bike races with me, and the big races at Sea Otter. So she's kind of into it too. So it's more of the family stuff now, but that's still motivating. When anytime you're racing a bicycle, you're doing any type of run. I mean, as you know, when you want to go fast, it's still going to hurt, and there's still a managing process in there. And getting up every day and cycling is another. I just did the Peloton before you called, because I didn't have time to go, so I did an hour and a half on that. So sweated bullets on that, and I got a big ride tomorrow. So yeah, athletics keeps me going every day. That's luckily, knock on wood, that I've been super fortunate with injuries, and of course I've had a lot of friends that been seriously injured. And we did the Ram Race Across America with Doug and David on the hand cycles, Race Across America.
Yes.
Which was unbelievably hard.
3,000 miles. You went from California to what, Maryland, I think it was?
Yeah, Annapolis, Maryland. Across the desert. It was 122 degrees. It was when Phoenix airplanes weren't taking off because it was too hot, and we're out there. And Doug and Dave they're on these carbon fiber hand cycles that are about a quarter of an inch off the asphalt, which is, you can cook eggs on it. And we had to check them every time they came in, flip them over, and make sure they weren't burning their butt, because they can't feel it, right? So
wow.
we had to.
So were you the ass check guy?
I wasn't. No, I had to rest, and but that's a whole other podcast, because we had so many stories. I mean, if one guy would have said, I don't think I could do this, I would have said, me neither. Oh, we're done. We're gone. Because it was so hard, so hot, and just so demanding, going all night long, all day long. But once we got into Colorado and it cooled off, actually it got, like 3 a.m, it was like 35 degrees. That's not fun, getting up and jumping out and going downhill at 35 degrees for 4 or 5 hours. And then we got into the rain, and just cramping, and David and all those guys getting sick, and it was just but then once we got there and did it, it was just like unbelievable that, for one, those two guys did what they did with the hand cycles. It was amazing. So yeah, we did it for good charity, raised a lot of money for Road to Recovery. And I don't know, I mean, I know David said before, and like, he would never do it again, but I guarantee if we all got together and said we wanted, one person said, let's do it, they'd all jump in again and do it. So they're crazy. But yeah, very one of my probably biggest accomplishments, I think, is doing that with those guys with no prep. It was like 4 months out when I was asked. And actually I got hit by a car February before June on PCH, and broke my tibia plateau and tore my MCL and ACL. I was jacked up for a while, and I still was able to, a couple months out, to get a couple 100-mile rides in, and that was my preparation. And Doug got asked around the same time and had no idea what the Ram was. David just asked him, do you want to do this bicycle race called the Ram? And Doug's like, yeah, I'm in. And as he talked to him, he's like, yeah, is there a website on this? What is this race? And he's like, it goes across America. And Doug's like, oh, and he had never even he didn't even have a hand cycle yet. He just built one. He built one out of out of wood and stuff in his garage and started doing it in his garage, and then came out here and did some rides, and we just took off.
Oh
So
my
that's the
God.
mental factor of motocross riders right there. That is a splitting like to the T of what motocross guys can do when they set their mind to it. And those two are just absolutely, you can sit down and talk to those guys all day long for what they've gone through after, their injuries, even more so than what they did before it. It was just amazing. And their mindset, and they're still the same way. Like when they go to the line, their mindset is like, we're doing this. We got this. It's like, so it was cool. A lot of good stories with those guys and throughout the whole event, but big
Oh my God,
accomplishment
I
there.
love it. Yeah, and when I saw that, I was shocked myself. And it's just funny. It was a group of men that all had that common past. Everyone had their own journey, but you all kind of faced very similar challenges, some different. But the fact that you guys all came together, is what you, Bailey, Diamond,
Yeah. And
and
Doug.
Henry. Yeah,
Yeah.
just just the thought of that almost gives you kind of chills thinking about that. So
Yeah. It was
what a
just
hell of a
fun. I
ride.
mean, because it was like Doug and I were together. We'd do the rotations, and then for 100 miles, then we'd come in and try to rest. And then Doug, so we just kept, every 5 hours swapping back and forth, and just in the motorhome with Doug and, the stuff, and then sleeping. And he's like, dude, you were sawing trees down snoring, because we're like 2 feet away. I'm like, no way, man. He goes, dude, I'm going to tape you next time. And like, I'm like, well, at least that's good. Cause at least I didn't think I slept at all, cause you're so hungry and tired and wet, and, you got to go to the bathroom, and you only have like 4 hours. Right. And that vehicle you're in has to drive to the next destination to get there when David and Mickey get there, and then you have to be ready when they get there to take off. So when you're still driving 2 hours, even though it's 100 miles, they take 4 or 5, 5 or 6 or whatever, depending on the terrain. And then you have to get there, get your rest, eat, get ready, get dressed, and then be ready for them when they get there. And by the time you lay down, all of a sudden you get the radio call. They're 20 minutes out. You're like, what? And you're waking up, and Doug's got to get in his wheelchair, and out that, we had things to get out, and we got to get your kid on. And I mean, it was just like for 7 days. And in the rain, the one time we didn't even take stuff off. We were wet. I was too tired to I just slept in my wet stuff and got up and went back on the bike with everything all wet again. It's like, but the poor guys that had to drive the motorhomes had to keep going too. So at least we got to rest. They have to keep driving and rotating. And there's like 12 or 13 people that it takes to do that with 3 vehicles, and we had a motorhome and a bus. And it's a big ordeal. If anybody's out there that doesn't know what the RAM is, Race Across America, go on their website and check it out. And then you got the guys that do it solo, and then you just go like, yeah, no.
I have an athlete in
Yeah.
mind, Josh Shepard. I'm gonna present this to him because
Yeah.
he loves a good challenge, and I think this might be right up his alley.
Yeah.
So
There's a guy that is on a hand cycle that does a solo. We got to pass him probably like 300. They take off a week before the teams do, because you can, you start catch, so it kind of almost ends at the same, but not really. They end up a little bit before us actually anyway, but we caught up to him. And I remember, I think it was either Mickey or Doug were on the hand cycle, so they got to catch up to him and talk to him, because he'd been going for like 9 days now by himself, so, and he's got his own van. He's got no legs is what he has, so he's cut off at the the legs, so he's in this he's got a couple trick trailers, and he's been going the whole way. So Doug, they got to talk to him a little bit while they were climbing, and then got to keep going. So that was just super cool. But those guys, they were just so in awe of this guy, been going for 9 days by himself for what we just went through with 3 other guys helping you out. Yeah, it's really, when you think you train hard and you suffer, then you go see what these guys can do, what the body really can do.
oh, wow.
It's amazing. So yeah, it was a cool event, and super glad I got to do it.
Yeah, and it's almost like the journey and the story of how you got there is more important. It's like nobody needs to know what the time was or how did you do, how did you finish, because there's really no value in that. The value is in all the stories and the frying of the eggs and the ass checks and
Yeah, we would be like in the middle of Kansas at 3 a.m, and we have checkpoints, right? Because that's what they have on the maps where and you can follow us live stream, so you can see where it's. And at so many of these checkpoints, we had tons of motocross people coming to see us. So it was just, we'd pull up and there'd be fans there that we'd have to put the happy face on because everybody's there. It's like, what are you doing here? It's 3 a.m. Well, we live 3 hours from here in North Kansas, and we saw you were going to be here, so we drove down. They have their kids. They drove through the night. There's like 20 people there, and and Doug and them are taking off, or I'm, whatever, and I'm staying, and Mick, it depends on where the transfer was, so they tried to go to the checkpoints. So that's where everybody'd be. But
Yep.
during the route, it was just whenever we felt like transitioning, when there was a hill, I'd always take over because Doug couldn't go up the hills. So I would do the hills, and we'd see if there was a downhill, he'd get more of that. So we never knew when we were going to stop to to tag each other. But
Yep.
at the checkpoints, we were always there with the motorhome and stay there for an hour, probably after the other team left, to clean up. And so there'd be a lot of fans there that were really cool. And sometimes you'd come in pretty pissed off, and Mickey would come in pissed, yelling at the driver because they went the wrong way one time, and like, Mickey's best fan is over here, his #1 fan, and he's all like, because Mickey's so cool, he's just like, oh god dang, sorry, I didn't mean to go off like that, we went the wrong way, and fuck it. He's like, and by this time we're just in La La Land, at 4 days in, and we don't even know up from down, and we're looking for hamburgers, and we started off eating gels and heat and hammer and being all athletic, and then about 2 days in, we're like, give me anything, pizza, I want burgers, give me burgers. You were just eating anything you could eat because you couldn't put enough food in you, right? You just weren't sleeping, your body's just going. It was just a nightmare of stuff. So it was it was a really cool event. We need to all four need to get together and do a podcast on all our, we talk to when we get together, like when I call Mickey and we always get back onto the Ram. Just immediately we talk about stuff, and we just start laughing, and then things pop up that we didn't even remember that he remembers, and we're just like, oh my God, and it's just so amazing. And so we really need to all get together, especially nowadays with every podcast that's out there. There's millions out, so
Yes.
This would be something really cool that I think every generation, even now the generation, would think we're crazy, and I guarantee they wouldn't want to do it. I'm sure they have no aspiration of riding a bicycle across the country. Just to listen to all the stories and what we went through and what it accomplished. And we tried to get a couple years down the road to get some other people to come on board to try to do it. But Hannah rides a lot,
Yep.
but nobody really seems keen on going across country. I'm up for it.
Yeah, I don't understand why you're not getting a ton of people. I mean, your email inbox after it's going to be flooded. I mean,
yeah,
who doesn't want? I mean, you've sold the story so well.
yeah.
That
There's the raw. It's called the Raw Race Across the West, which takes off the same time that goes to Durango, Colorado. That's one of the stops. And I'm looking at like, there's a couple guys I know live in Durango to do maybe a 2-man team. That's about 900 miles.
Yep.
So it's not a crazy amount of riding. I mean, it is, but that would be fun to do. And then there was even thoughts of like solo, because it's halfway, so that's been on the radar. But right now, I'm trying to get to where I need to be comfortably, but that's still on the mindset. But I'm sure there was somebody, Mickey or somebody, would want to do that if, for charity. I mean, we have to run around making money and make it a big thing. And I think nowadays we do it better than we did back then with Instagram, the internet, a little bit more, and maybe, we had it back then, but we really, we did as much as we could with it, but I think we could probably now do it a lot more and a lot better if we did that for charity, and I'd be up for that.
Well, I'll make a donation. If you do the Ram again, I'll donate $1,000.
All right, we got to start.
All right. So yeah, you've already got your first donor. So, you might want to think about it. But wow, Jeff, I am so grateful for your time. Love the way that we ended things with the story of the Ram. So many great take homes from this. So, we have a variety of athletes that listen to the podcast from all different disciplines. And so cool. I think that a lot of the things that you shared are not only going to help the motocross and supercross community, but I think a lot of these things can apply to anyone that's an athlete, or even anyone that's not an athlete that just wants to have the right mindset for just success in general. So I
Yeah.
just can't thank you enough. I
That,
mean, love the
yeah.
tips.
One thing I would get, I mean, I know like mental stuff you talk about um, is like after your sport, when you retire, a lot of athletes, football play, they don't know what to do. They get depression. I've been super fortunate because I have done everything I've wanted to do and love what I'm doing. Like I've kept, like you said, I got X Games gold at 48. I've never stopped. So I haven't had that. I'm kind of feeling it a little bit now, but I know a lot of athletes go through it. And I just think it's so super important to find something that, you totally love to do, whether it's in athletics, because usually all these sports are athletic that retire early, because of the athletics it takes to be in that sport, is to find, something in that area that makes them happy, that keeps them going, because it's just super important to where when people can't do what they love to do because of injuries, you can really see that side of it, that how they struggle because they can't do what they want to do. And I think it's super important for athletes when they're done racing, whether it's motocross, to pre-plan what they, like I kind of did with car racing, to get into something before you get there and not know where to go with your life, because it can be a struggle.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And, we saw that with Michael Phelps. And I think,
Mm-hmm.
the thing is that, and so the reason why this happens, in my opinion, is that if I ask you, who are you? And you were to
Right.
say, I'm Jeff Ward, I race motorcycles. It's no. That's not actually who you are. You're
Mm-hmm.
Jeff Ward. You're a father. You're a
Right.
friend. You're a son. You do race motorcycles. You race cars. You do this. You cycle. And when your identity and sense of self, which is that, like, if you imagine a pyramid, it is the foundation for everything. When
Yeah.
that foundational element of identity and sense of self now becomes, I am nobody, which is obviously not true, but if you don't prepare for it, like you said, it will feel
Yeah.
true. That is the mistake that many make. And I love that you
Yeah.
pointed that out, because the depression rate and all that, when you look into it and you see how many athletes struggle, and this is why a lot of athletes even try to go back into sports, or maybe some even go down the wrong path
Right.
after, is because they didn't prepare for it. And it's amazing that people
Mm.
don't talk about this more often. So I'm glad you brought
Yeah.
it up.
No, I understand the pyramid, because my family means the world to me. That's my biggest accomplishment I've ever had, is my family, and everything they've done. I've been there. I don't think I've missed a soccer game with my kids, or I went to Ponca, Loretta's, did the whole thing. And that pyramid is great. It's that one piece at the bottom corner over here. If I'm not happy and doing what I love doing, that piece is, it's gonna crumble, and I know it's just hard to, like, to find out. I mean, people, you got to get paid. You got to find a job that gets paid too, unless you're that well off in your sport that you put aside and you can just do what you want to do. But everybody seems to have to do something where they make a living. Um, so I've just been fortunate to be able to make the living at racing, and still been able to do that. But yeah, you got to just find something that makes you happy, that gets you up in the morning, and that'll keep the family and everybody, happy as well. So, you know,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I've been fortunate. But yeah, like you said, planning is a big key, and figuring out. Everybody plans their retirement, or should, with money. But if you're mentally not happy, then that's not going to work out very well.
That's so true. But I love it. Geez, that would be a darn good business we should think about putting together, because to have something, I've never even heard of a business that supports athletes that are transitioning from, active, involvement in sport to retirement. So you got my brain thinking already. So now
Yeah.
I have like business
What's it's
idea
kind
like 107
it's
now.
kind of like the military. It's kind of like the military. When they get out, like, there's so many programs now to get them into others. My son is in the military. He's in the Army and Intel, and he's out right now and he's doing his own thing. But he's helping do some stuff through racing, trying to get military people into car racing, and doing stuff. He's starting to do some car stuff, and so he's doing that aspect of it. But so it's kind of like that, when if you just get thrown, you need to have people out there where you can go to and say, hey, what can I do now? Here's my skill set, or here's whatever you want to do that you can get into. And planning it. I mean, riders got family that have businesses probably, and something they probably fall into and stuff. But it's hard as an athlete when you love what you do, and then you go into something that is not getting you up every morning to jump out there and attack the world. And the family is one thing that gets you doing it, but it's not everybody's fortunate to have the job they love, and I think just maybe planning a little bit as an athlete definitely helps for sure.
Oh, absolutely. But
Yeah.
yeah, I love it. Jeff, thank you so much for
Thank
all
you.
your time. Um, so much information here. I still am looking at how much you definitely owe me a pen, because it took me a pen to write all your accomplishments down. So, but we'll call it even on that, because I
Thanks.
appreciate all the
Appreciate it.
tips you offered.
Thank you
But
so much. I appreciate it.
yeah, thank you. And where can anyone find you if they want to reach out to you or have any questions? Where's the best place to find you?
My email, I get wardyracing@aol.com, or they can go on my my Instagram, which is Jeff Ward 3X, and leave a DM. I always go through my DMs and just erase them out, because there's always something that people, I guess, if you don't follow, they go into the one that, you don't follow. So I found that out recently, that I had thousands there I didn't know about. So I'm not very savvy on the internet stuff. So now I go in there and clear out everything to make sure if I don't miss somebody that's, hey, I got this or that, or you want to do this, or, so that's a good place to do too. Or even just in the comments or something, say, hey, I'm interested in, helping you out or helping me out, do something or something. And I'll definitely get back to them. I'm pretty good at that.
Yeah, and thanks for going through the comments. I asked for your goggles in 1992, and I appreciate you just responding last week, so I want to thank you for that as
well. So you got a pair of them?
You said they're on the way, so I'm checking. The
okay.
UPS guy seems to come daily, because I've got a wife that gets Amazon packages on the daily, so I'm hoping it's going to come through Amazon or UPS.
I don't even have any old race goggles. What I have is, probably an old, my son's. I don't even ride anymore. I haven't ridden in 2 or 3 years now, moto. So
really,
I done a couple photo shoots, and I'll go out with a couple friends. I did Mammoth. I can't remember how long ago it was, but I just I feel so good not riding now, like shoulders, and when I go ride, everything hurts. But it's just like the muscles get used and the joints that move that movement, where I don't hurt on the bicycle or stuff. So I kind of stay away from it. And I've seen so many friends that are still trying to ride fast and getting hurt, and I know my mentality. I'm not going to go ride slow, so it's just best I don't go do it.
Yeah, the same with me. I used to race supermoto, and a couple of my friends are still doing it, same age as me. And I just go back to, like you said, I'm just like, I don't want to befriend the nurses again at Concord Memorial Hospital. Yeah. And I already know what my deductible is. I don't want to pay it. And exactly. I don't want to be in pain. It's nice to wake up and feel okay.
Exactly. That's where I'm at right now. So I'm all good.
Joe. Well, thank you so much. And we'll talk soon. Thanks again.
All right. Take care.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.